So let's go ahead and get started. I'm excited to introduce Nicole Clegg from Planned Parenthood of Northern New England and Planned Parenthood Maine Action Fund. So hi, Nicole.
Christy, I feel like I was just in a meeting with you, so it's nice to see you again.
You too. And we're here to talk about sort of a bundle of bills today, a whole collection of them. So what do you want to share about this collection of bills? And I know we'll get into sort of some of the individual things, but help us understand the context.
Sure. I think that there are a couple of things to sort of explain where we are right now. And, for folks who might not be aware, we are really seeing an unprecedented number of bills being introduced this year to restrict access to abortion. Now, some of that I think comes from in 2019, the Maine legislature really passed landmark legislation to ensure people had access to safe and legal abortion and sexual and reproductive health care. They passed 6 bills, 2 of which dramatically changed people's lives when it comes to being able to make their own personal decisions around abortion. One mandated coverage for abortion in both public and private insurance. And so many of you are probably familiar with the Hyde Amendment, which is passed in Congress pretty much every year, which essentially says denies coverage of abortion for low-income people who depend on Medicaid as their health insurance. There was another bill that was passed that guaranteed or allowed qualified, trained, advanced practice clinicians to provide abortion care to their patients, which again contributes to making sure that this is a healthcare that's available to people all around the state and not just sort of in the large cities. So, I share that just because we had a lot of success. So it's not totally unexpected that we would see people who are opposed to safe and legal abortion introduce a flurry of bills this year to try and take that away. It also fits into sort of a national experience that we're seeing everywhere around state legislatures, passing and introducing just a sort of unprecedented number of bills to restrict access to safe and legal abortion. And, I think some of that is because of the change at the US Supreme Court, and opponents to safe legal abortion are trying to set up as many pathways as possible to try and overturn Roe versus Wade or gut it. And then the other piece is Joe Biden was elected as president and he supports reproductive rights. And so what you often see when you have a favorable president in the White House, state legislatures tend to try and swing the pendulum in the other direction. So that's sort of what gets us here. We saw a lot of bill titles in January that raised concerns for us around safe legal abortion, and now have at least 6 that have been printed. And we're anticipating that the Judiciary Committee, which is the committee that has oversight over them, will have a public hearing probably next month. The bills sort of have common themes. At a baseline, it's about restricting access and shaming and judging the people who have made a decision to get an abortion. And, the pathways in which they're trying to do that is one, there are a couple bills aimed at repealing Medicaid coverage or main care coverage of abortion, so that low-income people would again be denied coverage. There are a couple bills around mandating biased counseling. And so this is around forcing healthcare providers to give information that is erroneous or medically inaccurate to patients who are seeking abortion care. And they are specific to a concept that's, so-called abortion reversal, which implies that somehow if you seek medication abortion services and want to decide to change your mind after taking the pills, that you could do something to reverse the abortion. This is not medically sound. In fact, it's actually really dangerous. There was one study that was conducted that they had to halt because it was harming people's health.
Can we just clarify that the medication abortion is essentially the pill abortion, right? Not a surgical abortion.
Correct. Yeah. So there's sort of 2 types of abortion that are that most people, when they make the decision to end a pregnancy, will seek out. One is medication abortion. So that's taking a pill and then passing the pregnancy at home. And the other procedure is an in-office procedure. And so that's where, they go into the health center and have the abortion there. So those are a couple of examples of the types of legislation we're seeing. There's another bill that, in addition to mandating biased counseling and forcing patients to view ultrasounds, would also institute a waiting period. And we know that those types of restrictions disproportionately harm people of low incomes and people of color. And then there's one other bill, which is around forcing people who experience a miscarriage or have an abortion to make arrangements to have the fetal tissue buried or cremated, which again is about totally removing people's choice and autonomy and decision-making, and very much about shaming and judging people who made these decisions. I mean, this could cause real harm. And when you're thinking about someone who's experiencing a miscarriage, like, they should be able to decide how they want to grieve. This shouldn't be decided by politicians in Augusta. So that's my synopsis for you.
Sure. And in terms of, how the legislature, you've been doing this work for a long time. And so in terms of how you think the legislature will consider this collection, do you anticipate that it will be considered as a collection? How do you foresee, especially now that we're winding down toward the end of the session, like, what will this probably look like from the outside?
I mean, I would ask people, especially elected officials, to view them as a collection, because the end goal is the same. The vehicle, like the particular policy, may vary a little bit, but the intention here is to make it harder for people to make decisions about a pregnancy and judge and shame them. And we really need to be looking at all of them, understanding that that's what's driving it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because when we think of an individual bill, outside of the context of all of these different multifaceted ways to try to chip away at autonomy and, privacy and human dignity, when you look at just one individual bill, it can make more sense, or it can give people the impression that, oh, this is just trying to address, one particular situation. But then when we really look at a collection, and I think of this like the anti-trans bills, it's not about, an actual situation that they're trying to solve or an actual problem in communities. It's about a collective effort to roll back progress.
Exactly. I mean, I'm like reluctant to ascribe too much intention to the legislators that are introducing this, but if the desire here is around promoting healthy pregnancies and ensuring that we're addressing maternal and newborn and infant health, there are lots of good policies to put in place that could improve people's access to healthcare, their ability to parent and raise a family. These are not that. Like, that is not the goal here. Like, this is very much driven by making it harder for people who've made the decision to have an abortion to be able to exercise, their rights and agency around that.
I think that's a really good opening to one of the questions that I often ask folks, later in our conversation, but around the connection to gender equity. I mean, as a gender equity organization, I always want to be keeping in mind that piece. And I think that to some extent, reproductive health and reproductive justice has an obvious intersection with gender equity, but I don't think we should skip over the part where we name like why reproductive justice is so essential to gender justice. So tell me, I know you probably do a lot of thinking about that. So how do you put that into words?
Oh, well, that's no easy task, but I'll try. I mean, first, Planned Parenthood and Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, we are a reproductive health and rights organization. Reproductive justice is a movement that has been led by organizations, led by people of color. So it's important while, like we are an ally and support their policy goals. I do want to make sure that those organizations are recognized as the leaders in reproductive justice. When we say reproductive justice, that can mean lots of things. It can mean paid family medical leave. It can mean, universal health care. It can mean environmental justice. Because, when you think about wanting to raise a family and raise them in a way that's healthy and safe and aspirational, there are lots of policies that come into play. It's economic security and minimum wage. I mean, like there's just so much there. So, while we strongly advocate and will always, be engaged in the conversation around expanding and protecting access to sexual and reproductive health care and abortion, we also have an obligation to make sure that we're stepping up and advocating for other policies that improve people's ability to, have a family and raise them in the way that they want to, that's healthy and safe and, aspirational.
That's great. And I think when we sometimes lose sight of the fact that when we don't address economic justice, when we don't address reproductive health, when we don't address access to sort of health and stability, it's often women in our communities who are getting the short end of that stick.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I would throw a challenge.
Right. Poor women, brown women.
Yeah, and I think I would throw a challenge out to, organizations that are primarily focused on minimum wage or, environmental justice to also see the intersections with the work that we do too around expanding and protecting reproductive health. That we all need to be, sort of like, I don't know, I'm going to mess up the expression about, rising tides and lifting all boats. But that's really like, we need to be working hand in hand and seeing how our, collective priorities support, everyone in their goals around whether or not to have a family.
So in terms of these bills, it sounds like the Judiciary Committee probably will take the majority of them, at least in one day, if not in one hearing. Do you think that's accurate?
I mean, I think that's reasonable to expect that. Likely. If you look at how they're doing things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As we wind down and get closer to the end of the session, I'm seeing a lot more, joint hearings or things clumped together by topic. What do you think is the likelihood? I mean, I think we always need to take attacks on autonomy seriously. What do you think people should know or be able to expect here in terms of how likely some of these proposals are?
Well, first, we need to take them seriously every single time. But that said, we have a governor who signed those 6 bills that I mentioned into law. So we have a governor who's strongly in support of protecting reproductive rights. We also know, just based on who voted in 2019, that there are majorities in the House and Senate who support access to safe and legal abortion and are likely going to be opposed to these measures. Now, I want to reassure everyone on that front, but then I also want to make sure that we take it, that we do our jobs here, which is taking these opportunities to have conversations with our elected officials about the importance of reproductive rights and protecting them. I don't think that we should ever pass by a piece of legislation, even though it's unlikely to become law. It presents us with an opportunity to have those conversations, to share our personal stories, to help reduce the shame and stigma that's attached to decisions that people make about abortion. So that's my long-winded answer.
I would agree that I think the more we talk about these issues, you know, things that for so long, I mean, and truly for millennia, like have been unspoken. I think the more we speak the unspoken, the more we reduce shame, the more we create space for communities to actually talk about the things that really impact their lives.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, did you have a response to that?
No. I mean, like, I'm just nodding in agreement for sure.
Um, and I see this comment we need to highlight for those who think that we're living in a post-feminism age, that actually we continue to deal again and again with these proposals, these attacks.
Yeah, and the experience of accessing abortion care in Maine is different than it is in Alabama or, you know, West Virginia. You know, like, so while we have been incredibly fortunate, or not, I don't want to actually say it that way. I mean, like, while Maine voters and Maine legislators continue to do the right thing, which is allow people to make these decisions, the best decisions for themselves, there are lots of places in this country where safe legal abortion is virtually unattainable. And, you know, we can't turn a blind eye to that.
What do you see as the next steps for progress and for access then? I see on Facebook one of our questions is about uh, Shelley Pingree joining a local community organization. What is the message to our federal representatives and to the folks in DC about making sure that it's not sort of the luck of where you were born or where you own a home that allows you to be able to access these your rights around this?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question. You know, I mean, because of the Roe versus Wade decision, it set up this opportunity or ability for state legislatures to treat abortion differently. So your rights really depend on your zip code. And the only way to course correct for that is to pass legislation in Congress. You know, and there's the Each Women Act. So there are pieces of legislation that have been introduced in the House and have counterparts in the Senate that would improve access to reproductive rights and access to abortion, like getting rid of the Hyde Amendment, like making sure that insurance includes abortion as a part of its pregnancy coverage. Like, you know, there are some really important policies that need to pass in Congress. You know, and I mean, like, I'd also share, like, and we're seeing some movement. You know, Biden came into office and one of his early steps was to repeal the global gag rule, to reinstate funding through, you know, international family planning organizations. The Biden administration has taken steps to initiate the process to repeal the gag rule, which forced family planning providers like us and Maine Family Planning out of the Title X program. You know, so I mean, we do need to be turning our eyes to Congress and demanding and supporting our elected officials in, you know, advocating for policies at the federal level too.
Are there policies that you'd like to see in Maine that can help us continue our march toward progress?
Oh God, yes, lots of them. You know, I think access to healthcare is critically important, and there are still many people living in our state that don't have access to quality healthcare, and that includes behavioral health, that includes substance use treatment. We still have a long way to go to make sure that everybody has access to the care that they need and aren't making decisions about, am I paying my rent, or am I taking, you know, am I going to the doctors because I'm sick? So like I would love to see a policy or policies that, you know, make that dream a reality. And I mean, the good news is that there are lots of policies that are making their way through the legislature this year that are chipping away at that, or, you know, expanding access in different ways. So that would be my big goal.
Yeah, I would also add, you know, one of the things that you mentioned early on about how if people really want to protect you know, the health and well-being of Mainers, there are lots of ways to invest in that. And I think about, you know, I think abortion access should be, you know, safe and legal and readily available, all of those things. But I also wish we were able to put our resources into conversations about how people are not getting pregnant when they don't want to be. Like, how do we avoid the abortion question by really investing in supporting people around controlling their reproductive cycle, you know, from upfront. And Maine actually has made huge progress in terms of teen pregnancy in the last 10 years. And I believe we're one of the best in the country in terms of really driving those rates down. And yet there's a significant disparity still among teens of color and white teens, and a big disparity in terms of geography. So like, we know that there are still big barriers for folks who don't want to be getting pregnant and yet either, you know, can't access the means or, you know, just lots and lots of barriers to access there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're a large rural state. Like, you know, we have issues around access to care that's within a drivable distance. I mean, you know, we shouldn't have people who have, you know, who need access to abortion care driving 5 hours. Like, that does not compute. And, you know, so there's lots of things we need to be doing to support and create a sort of healthier, more robust healthcare system. Going hand in hand with that is education as well. You know, people need to understand and be empowered to ask for the kind of care that they need. You know, Maine has made tremendous strides in supporting young people in getting access to reproductive and sexual health care so that they can avoid becoming pregnant if they don't want to be. But we still know, I mean, like, we still know that there are lots of people that still just don't have basic health information about their bodies. And, you know, we have real work that, you know, still needs to get done to make sure that young people and all people understand what's happening to their bodies, know how to advocate for themselves and get the care they need.
Absolutely. Working in sexual violence for so long, seeing the sort of intersection of, you know, the lack of autonomy for young people, lack of ways we empower young people to sort of understand how they own their body and how to like operate their body to, and the tools to do so is really just mind-blowing. And I think that's an area where we can make so much more progress in terms of just changing our culture about that.
Yeah.
So just a reminder that if folks have questions, we have a couple of more minutes. But while we do, are there other things that you think, Nicole, people should know or do about these bills, whether it's, you know, the specific bills or whether it's how we talk about them or how we're addressing them in the public sphere? Like, what do you want people to know about this collection?
I mean, you know, I strongly encourage everyone to contact their legislator and, you know, voice their opposition. Legislators want to hear from their, I mean, like, even though when they complain about it, they still want to hear from their constituents, you know, so I think it's important. You know, I also think it's important for, if you have a story to share and you're ready to share it, to do so. You know, we really, I mean, like, so much of this is grounded in stigma and silence, right? And, you know, so we need to be supporting people in sharing their experiences and supporting them as they do that, so that they know that it's safe and courageous and rewarded and makes a difference. And, you know, I think when we think about the success of 2019, so many people testified at that public hearing and shared their own experience with abortion in a way that I'd never seen before. And that can't, I mean, that has an impact, even for the people that voted against it. Like, they can't walk away from the story. Like, they heard about it in a way that they hadn't heard about it before.
Right. And I think stories too, like, that's part of the how we change our whole cultural thinking about this. Like, we can use it for legislative strategy right now, but the big strategy is to change it so that, you know, one of the comments early up, how do we prevent people from trying to turn shame into legislation? Well, we do it by changing the culture and the conversation around this.
Yeah, we stop letting people feel like they've done something wrong. And we start acknowledging that people are human and people become pregnant for a wide variety of reasons and make decisions that are best for themselves. And whatever their decision is, that's okay. Like, I mean, we really need to be embracing that and, you know, giving people, reassuring folks who have made the decision to have an abortion that they've not done anything wrong.
Right. Actually, people have been having abortions as long as people have been getting pregnant. So
I've got a question for, I think, both of you. This is Julie Shermer. I'm from NASW, Maine. And this is a dilemma that probably all of you are good at, but I want to hear, one, is anybody coordinating testimony, particularly oral testimony? And two, when you have like 5 or 6 bills all in the same morning, or this in judiciary morning in the afternoon, how do you coordinate, and which bills do you choose to do the oral presentation or not, so that you don't like have them be there until midnight?
I'm going to say that this comes up a lot. And I don't think that I have the perfect answer. You know, I think, I mean, there's the aspect of personal story sharing, which I encourage, that it's just so powerful. It really resonates with legislators, and they need to hear about that. They need to understand the lived experience. Then for organizations, you know, I think, I mean, like, it's sort of finding the sweet spot. You know, it's kind of like, what are the pieces here that are most important for committee members to hear directly from me about, and which ones are the ones that I can submit written testimony. You know, we understand that, like, there are 6 bills. Asking people to submit 6 pieces of legislation in opposition is a lot. You know, so I would also say that people can be creative and submit a piece of testimony and just be clear that they're opposing all of the bills, but they want to talk about one particular thing. Desti, I don't know if you have a better answer.
I don't have any good answer for that question. I think that's been sort of a perpetual, like, how do we navigate the problem of humongous Zoom, you know, hearings that I don't know that anyone has solved. What I have seen, I think, to some extent, though, that seems useful is that when we have bills that are sort of new, that are introducing new concepts, I think about something like LD2, which were the racial impact statements. Like, we'll have a lot of learning to do out of that. Or around that. And so it's really powerful and useful to have these big hearings, because there's so much work we have to do around understanding the impact of racism. And so, not to derail this, but I think that it makes more sense to make a different choice on bills that, you know, we've talked about a lot before. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't think there's a great answer. Well, I think that we are here at our time. I'm seeing comments about setting up, though, a riff about the Hamilton debate, and think that we should 100% come up with a rap battle for how to address attacks on reproductive choice. So if anybody wants to do that over drinks or tea sometime, then count me in. And I think that's it for our time here today, Nicole. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm glad we got to chat about this.
Thank you. And thanks to the Maine Women's Lobby. You are a tremendous ally and partner in this work. So, we really like working with you.
Thank you. Same to you. I'm glad we get to be friends. So, all right. Thanks to all of you who joined us here today. Hope to see you next week. Have a great day.